So, yeah, this is a talk about when remote sucks. Sometimes it does, and it's usually not if you do it wrong, but if you don't know what you're doing, it's usually the problem. Just first, some things about me. I currently work as a team lead for a development team. It's a remote development team, but parts in Sweden and parts in other parts of Europe. And I've also been working remotely on and off for over 20 years as a developer and designer. I have also been part of teams that have moved from all office and gradually to remote and then to all remote, where we had people from all over Europe as well. So I've done this journey a few times. But first of all, what this talk is not about, I will not talk about tools for remote work, like comparing Slack or Microsoft Teams or anything like that. And it's not a step-by-step process for you to follow, because there are none of those. Each team is unique because it's built up of people. So, but there are learnings that you might and ways of thinking that are good when you try to embark on this remote journey. So this is a talk about masonry. And why it's about masonry, it's because building a team is about the people, but you can't just take a bunch of people and think that you can build a wall from that. You need the mortar between the bricks in order to make it stable and make it last. And that's actually the hard thing. Masons, or people who do masonry, they train a lot on applying mortar and not as much of stacking bricks. Babies can do that. But a real craftsman, when it comes to mortar, they train a lot with a mortar. So the relationships is actually the hard part with remote work. So this talk is divided in two parts. Part one, I will sort of give you an overview of where we are now and a brief history. And then in part two, I will talk about how remote is different, and because there will be new problems, and then new problems means you need new strategies of tackling them. I'm not sure how long this talk will be because I haven't timed it, but there will be time for questions afterwards, at least. Perfect. So part one, where are we now? This is pre-pandemic, before COVID came. Most people stayed at the office. Very few people worked remote. So then COVID comes, and then everyone goes remote, and no one is at the office, which is quite hard actually to do this flip. Then we find ourselves in a situation where, like, now we can go back to the office, but we still had good things from remote. So what do we want to do? And there are learnings from both that are good, but depending on your team, you might want to take some of those and implement them in your team. So this is sort of the duality that we are in now. We can go back to the office, but we might want to go remote, and some people have moved, so they can't go back to the office, but we still want to be a team. So this is what might look like. First, you have the office for one haircut, and then you went remote, and then you got a long haircut or a long hair, and now you're left with some form of mullet, something in between that's very hard to handle. But if we were to ask the experts on remote work, who would those be? It would probably be 37 Signals. They wrote the book Remote 10 years ago or something. Lots of good things. They have a company that's remote first. They've always been remote. So they have a lot of experience and ideas about it. And then you have GitLab, also remote first. They've always been a remote company. Every year they release the remote playbook and how they work with the remote implementing remote work all over the world. Really good books. I've read them both. And you might want to say that, yeah, those are the experts. Let's do what they do. And it's sort of like going up a mountain. You want to reach the top where 37 Signals and GitLab are. But you start from down here because you were just thrown into this environment of remote work. And you look at the mountain and you think, yeah, I'll go that way. It looks quite easy. I'll just follow whatever they said they would do. But 37 Signals have been doing this for 20 years, and GitLab has done it also from the beginning. So this is more what your journey will probably look like, and they have probably forgotten about a lot of these gnarly things in the middle. So, and you can't see these things because you're standing down here, and this first top of the mountain, the first mountain is hiding all these nasty things. So this is basically what your journey will look like, probably. And some people might just go back when they see this and say, yeah, just go back to the office. It's no use. It's not worth it to go up all the mountain if we need to go through this thing. But then also, like a hot take is that you are not GitLab or 37 Signals, and neither am I or my team. We don't have to do exactly the way they do. We can take them as inspiration, but they have been doing this for 20 years, and you have not, and I have not. And they have one team, one product. So there are things that are very stable for them, so they can iterate a lot. So that's the short, like, where we are. Like, not everyone needs to go remote, but you can take the good things from both of them, both office and remote. But then, in order to do remote well, you need to need to know what's different, so you can adapt to the new environment. And that's what humans are really good at, adapting to new environments. But one of the things that is in the beginning, communication is really central. It's for everything we do as developers. We communicate all the time. We try to take someone's communication, turn it into code, solve a problem, turn it into code, and then have them communicate back if we did the right thing. And then while problem solving, we need to communicate with each other, with like code reviews, coming up with solutions, and so on. So communication is always key to our job as developers. And since that changes a lot, we can have a look at something, how we evolved as humans. Like, if we go back 12,000 years, we lived like this. We mostly communicated around the campfire. That's where we told our stories, and that's where all the knowledge was, like in these stories. And we are not that different right now. Like, the office is very much the campfire, where we talk and bond and come together as a group of people and talk strategy and so on. This high frequency or high bandwidth communication, the office is actually very good for that. We can see the whole person, like, we can see the way they stand, the way they, like, the body language and the tone of voice and all of those. So, yeah, we can see everyone at the same time, which is really good. But it's also, as you can see here, it's quite noisy. so it's really not good for other things. And I think a lot of people noticed that during this COVID pandemic, that once you get home, you get a lot of stuff done. Like no one's bothering you, disturbing you, asking you like minute questions and so on. So it's it's good for some things, but not good for other things. And when we moved to remote, the way we communicate is very, very different. We don't really know, like, if someone else is, yes, we can maybe see if they are online, but we don't know if it's appropriate for me to bother you now, like disturb you. Am I taking you out of context? You might be very productive and doing stuff, and then I just disturb you. So it's more of like you need to learn how to write in a way that can later be read by someone, and then getting the whole context at the same time. So writing is actually a very important skill if you want to enjoy remote work, because it's synchronization of times and people is very hard in a remote setting. So writing and explaining things as if you didn't know anything about it is very good to do. And you can always try these out and get better at it by writing more, like taking an extra 5 or 10 minutes every time you write a Jira ticket, or write something in a merge request or a pull review, and just to learn how to phrase things in text instead of when you talk. But there are other communication tools for us as developers as well, that we can make use of, because this writing can take, it takes quite a while to get good at it, and it takes like not everyone are like to do it. So, but there are other communication tools. So I've been using mob programming and pair programming a lot when writing is not the best tool for the job. Some like 37 signals, they will say no, like write everything and then wait for someone to take their time and read what you've written, so and so on. So they are very much in the write down everything mode, but they are also hiring people who are really good at writing, so they have that writing culture. And if you haven't tried writing for a long time, then it's really hard to come into one of those cultures. So maybe not embrace that one if you don't have the people for it or experience. But there are other things like mob programming and pair programming, and these are just tools. Like mob programming is a way of, if you haven't heard about it, it's where everyone sits and does just one task, and then you switch every 5 minutes. You switch the keyboard to someone else, and I will say to someone else who's on the keyboard, this is how I'm trying to figure this out, and how I would design it, or what just tell the person to write the thing that's in your head. What's really good about that is that other people get to understand how you think and not just look at whatever you produced. So that's one of the communication tools that you can use. And pair programming is mostly like mob programming, but just 2 people, and it can be less intimidating if you are just 2 people. Some people find it hard to think in a mob programming environment, but they can be the fact of the point of the mob programming is to have all the minds on one single problem, so then together we will solve the problem. And then you have the deep focus time, which is, I would consider it a tool, because if you are Some people need to have uninterrupted focus time, like 3 or 4 hours, in order to actually get their head around everything and then actually find a new solution to it. And if you are a team of people who need deep focus time, then you also need to have that as one of the tools that you might want to reach for if there's something really hard to figure out. But these are just words. So if I were to put them into some context, this is every project. Everything you do always goes through these phases. First, you have a phase where you figure things out. That's where you don't know what you don't know. You deal with uncertainty and unknowns and problem solving. And then after a while, you can see that this also is a hill, just like the first thing that you moved up. And then gradually you move up, and then you come to the top, and then you can actually see how you're going down. And then you come into the phase of certainty and confidence and execution, and that's where you make things happen. And these have very different characteristics. This is what we've sort of ended up with a lot in where I've worked. We always start with mob programming, or doing everything as a group, because there is very like all the question marks are straightened out during that. So we all know what we expect to have, what the expected outcome is, and then we also try out different solutions together, so we can also learn from each other. But after that, when you know what you're supposed to do, it's for some people they just continue mob programming because it's we just started, so why don't we just finish it together? Some people want to focus on their own and think through things for a while, and then you want to allow for this deep focus time, but then you know what you want to do, and then you can end with either pair programming, or we've actually started doing mob reviews of the code, because then we get every person's input on the solution. And the good thing about doing that is you can start a code review earlier. You don't need to polish it and stuff like that. But because if everyone's there, then it's easier to come to it's faster to come to the end there. So mob reviewing is something we've started, and it's really, really nice, both mainly for learning purposes. But some people want to change it, like they might want to use the office as a tool. So you might need to go to have the office environment where you have whiteboards and sticky notes and 4 computers next to each other and other people in that meeting. And the office is just another tool, just like the other ones. And for us, we've come to this conclusion, like office sometimes and remote most of the times, because we do a lot of the mob programming remotely as well together. And but then we also have the office for other meetings that are more like where we discuss problems that are like out in the open of that might be sensitive, or that like where it's in the very beginning, it's easy to have misunderstandings, and it's important to get the whole bandwidth of information. But then something else that changes is team dynamics. When you are at the office, it's easy to, like, it's quite natural, because a group of people that's how we evolved as a species, to be groups of people. So we're pretty good at adapting into that environment. But it's sort of changes a little bit when you go remote. But the thing that doesn't change is how a team, like the flow, the way a team works and evolves. And it's more apparent in a remote setting because you don't have the people next to you, so you have to sort of, there's a lot of information that's not being transmitted to you, so it's easy to misunderstand things. But each team goes through these 4 phases. If we want to look at, like, on this axis, it's team effectiveness, like how effective are we as a team, or how productive are we, and then the team performance. And each team starts in the forming stage, and that's where we form, and that's where we say hello, and then we sort of try to see how people are behaving, what they like, and like it's like when you come to a dinner party, and then you seem to like everyone, and then you see similarities, like, oh, you like red, I like red, oh, we are both red people, that's perfect. And then after a while, it starts, you go into the storming phase, and this is almost a fact that you have to go there in order to come to this place where you want to be. But many people want to skip this storming phase, but please don't, because you won't go into the next phase. And the storming phase is where you see about, that's where you start to disagree and with each other. And the storming phase is actually the thing that's most sort of the biggest difference in remote work as well, because you don't get all the information from the other people. So this is where you actually need to start talking more and doing more together. And you can see here the effectiveness and like how much you get to produce is very low when you're in the storming phase. But then when you get through it, you're producing much more, and it's much happier. But I'll try to show here a little bit of what the different phases are. So a group of people, we start with them, and then we'll duplicate them, and then gradually, as you go into becoming a team, you move closer together the more you work together, and then you can see that things start to overlap and new colors emerge. So that's good, but it's also causes for friction. So this is where you're in the storming phases. Sometimes it might be that you move away from each other. Maybe these 2 people, they really sort of hit it off, but then this person is outside, which makes it not a team, really. But if we have them like this, and they start working really well together, it just goes like norming is that when you accept each other's differences and see them as something, as strengths instead of something that's wrong because they don't do it the way you do it. And then you just understand each other, and that's when you're in the performing phase. And that's mostly like this. You're a group of people working closely together, and you understand each other because the surface area is so you understand each other's differences. But then let's do a new team member comes in, and then you would think that this is a performing team. So then they will just, they will absolutely perform from the beginning. But I've seen this quite a few times, and it's very much not like that. Like every time you change something in a team, it's not like you go down to norming, it's you start from the beginning again. You're in the forming phase. It's going to be easier because you already have 3 people who've been working together, but you still need to start from the beginning again, because these 2 might hit it off really well, and then this person feels left outside. And then you have these 4. It looks a little bit different from this. So it's a new team just by adding 1 person. And the same goes for when someone leaves, when this person leaves. All that color and knowledge and things that the way this blue person worked together with the green person, that's no longer there. So you're a new team again, and you need to figure out how you want to work together. And then there can be other things that changes, not just people. It can be, well, Corona came and you had to work from home. And if something sort of major happens, you're also back to square one. But every time you go through these iterations, it gets easier and easier. But knowing that you actually do go through these things, it's easier to accept that you are in the storming phase. It's actually something good. And if you have this in front of your team, then everyone knows that, yeah, we are in the storming phase. Everyone accepts that. It's a natural way of getting to the next stage. Just like teenagers fight a lot with their parents, it's very normal, and it's supposed to be like that. That's where you see the differences, and also what's good. Okay, so that's a little bit just like team dynamics. And there is something about the going from in a remote setting, it's easy to it's efficient, and then you do things as people, like individuals. But I found it that treating all the things that you do as a team, instead of like these are the team's responsibility, not me doing a lot of stuff. It's more like what is the team doing? So phrasing it in the team context instead of the people doing stuff, it's more important in a remote setting, because you don't really just see that group of people and treat them as if they were a team, even though they are one person talking. But the way you can mitigate these problems in storming, like we had the tools from before, the mob programming, pair programming, and deep focus work and so on. You can also use them as tools here. In the forming phase, I've seen pair programming work really well, because you're new with each other. You need to sort of get to know each other each person's. But then when you come into the storming phase, I found mob programming to be a really good tool for that, because it forces everyone to pay attention to how other people think, and not just say that think that they are doing the wrong thing because they're not doing what I think is right. So mob programming I've been using it for getting through the storming phase. It's really, really well. And then you can use the deep focus when everyone knows how each other work in a good way. Then the deep focus is perfect for that stage, if you have people for that. Otherwise, you can just do mob programming all the time. Some people really enjoy that. And then it comes to onboarding. This is also about the people. So onboarding onto a team in the office, quite easy. You get your monitor, you get your chair next to the other people in the team, and then you go to lunch together, you go on, like, talk a lot together, and it's easier to do the onboarding at the office, I would say. But if you want to do it remotely, then you need to have some form of process, but still keep the sort of the humanity in it. And then you can, many people just create a checklist. So you have access to Jira, you have GitHub credentials, you can write some code, and then you're added to Slack so you can talk to the other people, which sometimes people just think that that's enough. And then you have an introduction of the product with the product owner, and then now you are hired as a developer, now just to do development stuff, and then yay, onboarding completed. But that's not really, that's the first step. So yes, they have the tools to do the job, but then more often than not, I see this in remote settings where the team that was there before, they know how they discuss, they have these private Slack channels and group, and then someone new comes in, and they don't really know if it's appropriate to ask for help in some way, or how do I do that, and so on. So this is the number one thing I've seen that's really hard, is making sure that the new people aren't feeling left out, and that you're explicitly making sure that they are onboarded well. So you shouldn't expect people to magically pick things up. Just because a developer comes in doesn't mean that person understands the whole context of your domain or the complexities. But what you should do is to make the new people the priority. So what we've been doing a lot is, if someone new comes, then that is getting that person up to speed is the highest priority. So getting their computer there, making sure that if they have a question, that's higher priority than me taking up a new task if I finish something. So the number one priority is the new people, so they feel like they're onboarded, just like we will take them to lunch, which doesn't really happen remotely. So just one example that you can do is you can have an onboarding buddy, so that you can rotate. So each week someone has the responsibility of the new person, helping the new person with all the questions. So the new person knows that Jane will not feel like I'm disturbing her this week, because that's like I'm her buddy this week. And then you rotate that, which means that everyone will also get to know this new person, which is really nice. Oops. And then also it's good to know that when you onboard someone, you will go from the forming to the storming phase again. And like every time you add someone to a team, productivity will go down. It's not like, yes, we have new people on the team, now we produce more. You actually produce less for a while. And that's always the case, I have found. But in order to, you need to go through that in order to come to later on produce more. And one thing that I've seen as well is developers have less trouble migrating to remote work, because we were remote very much in the beginning. Like, we put on our headphones, and when we needed to focus, that sort of signaled that, yes, don't disturb me, and I'm in focus mode. So when we came home, it was basically the same. a lot. But we still need to interact with management, and I use management as in a very broad term, but it's the people who have stakeholders outside in the business more than other developers or my development manager or engineering manager. And it's sometimes it feels like this, like everyone's just asking, are we there yet? Because the management are used to seeing the whiteboard where the progress is there, and they can come and ask, like, how's it going, and they can see the people there. But when you move remote, that's all lost for them. So it can sometimes feel like it's nagging, but it's also a different way of communicating. And the thing I found most works the best is not to talk about numbers. So if someone asks, how is it going? You don't say we're 60% there, or we're 80% there, or so on, because numbers lie. And when you're 80% done, you only have 80% left to do, which is always the case almost. But it's better to show the journey or where you are. And again, hill charts are a perfect way to doing that. There are free online tools that I can send links to if you want to, for creating these. And what you actually do is, if you put this circle on the uphill, then other people, because management are just other people, they will understand where you are in your journey. Like, yeah, they're still figuring things out, so I'll just not bother them right now. But if it's stuck here for like a week or so, then they might want to question should we actually do this? Because now it's becoming really expensive and it's just dragging out on time. So they also get the opportunity to say, we don't want you to do this. We want you to do something else because this is less important now that it costs so much. So hill charts are a really good way of communicating where you are in your process with management. But the number one thing I would say is to not stop experimenting. And if you don't have a retrospective for your team, I would say create one where you reflect on how you work together. And most of the things you can't think your way into, like, am I someone who likes deep work, or am I someone who likes mob programming? You probably don't know that until you've tried it. And until you tried it for a while, one time, now it doesn't really matter, but do experiments. Here are just 4 experiments that you can do, and take them for 2 weeks or something, and then you can say this sprint, if you have 2-week sprints, then we mob program everything, like from start to finish, and then we evaluate to see, is this for us? Maybe some say, yeah, it's too much with mob programming all the time, but there are some really good benefits of it that we might want to adapt. So then you take some parts of it, or replace the morning stand-up with a message in Slack if you want, just to go full remote and full async, or just remove all the scheduled meetings, see what that happens. And this one is something that we've done, which is surprisingly good. We take one person who takes all the support, all the meetings, like all these scheduled meetings that we have, and that person has that sort of fragmented focus for a week, which means that the next week they will not have that, so someone else will take over. So we rotate that support. And I've done that in a couple of places, and it's always been really good. It's a hard sell to developers, but it's really, like most of them actually like it afterwards. So these are some learnings that I have come up with during my years. And if you have any questions about your situation and what you could do, and if there's something that's bothering you, you can just drop me a line at this email address and I will answer. And now for questions.
Yes, if you have any questions, you can either unmute or write them in the chat. Okay, we have one here. How do you recreate the campfire for a remote team?
Very good question, and it's the $1 million question. And it's first I will say it depends, but it depends on the people in the team, and what that's also a way to experiment. We've experimented with, let's have 1 day a week at the office where we where the purpose of that day is not to write a lot of code, because that's what we have home. Like when we sit at home, we have no distractions and so on. And the point of that is to meet as people, but the whole team can't do this because we have people out in Europe as well. But we make sure that we meet also in person a few times a year. But for us, we've tried this. Let's meet up and have a Swedish fika every day and have some coffee. That was too much for us. We ended up with we have it once a week, and then most of the campfire thing we have is when we meet in these mob sessions, because it's quite natural, because to start talking about other things as well, and like the bonding and the oh yeah, I went to this meeting and they said something about that, so now it's natural for me to also say it here and so on. So we use the mob sessions as a way of having this campfire open. So that's what we have. But then other people are like, other teams are comprised of different people, so that might not be your thing.
Yes, and we also have a question from Alexander. Have you ever worked with anything like permanent video links screens to glue remote spaces together?
Me personally, I haven't done that. It's mostly because the different people have different ways of thinking, and for me personally, it's I do a lot of thinking away from the computer. So I sit in a chair, or I take a short walk, or like to think about those things, and then I would feel I needed to sit in front of the computer in that case. So for me, I haven't tried it, but what we do have is, when we have if we want to start developing something, then we open an open video call, basically, that people can just drop in on and so on. So it's more of an inviting, I'm going to start working on this thing, and then I open a channel or an open video meeting that other people just can join in on, and they can just sit and watch me do this, and or talk to me together, or we can do like proper pair programming, or something like that.
Yes, and we also have one question here. How to plan mob programming? How much time should it take?
If the question is how long should each person, like before you rotate, then like 5 or 10 minutes, I would say. But also, if you want to try more programming, and you haven't done it before, and I would suggest taking something that's low risk, like it doesn't have to be delivered right now, but that you maybe just spend an hour a day, and that could be one of these experiments to mobile program something like an hour each day, because that's a way of getting into more programming as well. So that's sort of in a time question, but I can, if you email me, I can give you more detailed questions on what you might want to do.
All right, and what are your ways of encouraging having camera on during team sessions?
I'm a bit conflicted on that. I personally am a little bit against the having to do it, because it is, there's also a bunch of research saying that it's actually bad for your it triggers things in your brain that are very related to the fear response, which increases your stress level and so on. So it can be like, I tend to start with the video camera on, just so to see there's a person there. Oh yeah, and now I can see that person and so on. Yeah, and then I turn it off because I have a hard time having to keep track of everyone's faces all the time, so I tend to lose track. So, but it's a nice thing, like saying hi and goodbye at least, like, because then you see a person there. But requiring people to always have their camera on in video meetings is, I'm against it.
Okay, thank you. I think we have gone through all the questions in the chat. If there's anyone else, just write in the chat right now, or speak out, or email Tobias at the email address. Maybe you can, yeah, thank you. If there's no more questions, I would like to thank you for this webinar and your insights and your answers to the questions. And we will later today also load up the video on our YouTube channel, so you can see it from there again if you would like to.
Super.
So thank you so much for today.
Thank you all.